Hello everyone and welcome back. You may know that recently I've been doing a series where I play different video games and hunt for inspiration, which gives us a good opportunity to admire the work done by 3D artists in these video games, because a lot of really impressive stuff goes under the radar, or I don't think it gets as celebrated as it should be. So I've been building up reference boards full of screenshots of things that I've really enjoyed in these games. But just gathering references is one thing, I also want to put them to use. So there are a couple of ways I want to do this. First of all, and what we're going to do in this video is we're going to analyze them, and I'm going to extract interesting things from them. So this is going to be more focused on what I want to do with them, but you might find it interesting as well by paying attention to the kinds of things that I pay attention to when we look through these references. Additionally, afterwards, I would like to take some of the things I find interesting and then recreate them in Blender, or create variations of things that they've inspired me to do in Blender, which may or may not be done on this channel or on my brand new Blender channel called Blender Holt. So I'm using software called PureRef, which is free to download, but there's also paid versions. I've paid for it, by the way, in case you're wondering. The only reason you'd want to pay for it is if you want to use it commercially, and technically these videos are commercial, so I purchased a license way before even doing the inspiration series. But the kinds of things I want to focus on are lighting, excuse my mouse hand-drawn text, then also materials, and I'm going to put resources, so just RES, if we can call that an S. Now, these are the things I want to focus on because one of the main parts of my business is making artistic resources and tools for people. A large part of that is being able to demonstrate them. So if I look at something like this, I think, okay, deconstructing a scene like this, I can think about it from the lighting perspective, which is take a very simplified version of the scene with, say, 3 windows like this, and use this as a demonstration scene for lighting tests, so we can have objects inside of it. And perhaps the tool here is having some kind of lighting behind the windows, which will form part of a product that I'm working on called Afterglow, so that both of these things, being the demo scene and the actual light object itself, are things that I can create that will contribute to this project. Now, when you look at resources, you may have different purposes in mind for the kinds of things you want to do. Maybe you're actually working on a video game of your own, and you want to take inspiration from a AAA budget game like this to try and add a bit more spice to your environments. That's fine. The cool thing here, though, is that even if we take different things from these scenes, I think you might find it interesting seeing how I deconstruct it as well. So another way to look at these scenes is compositionally for 3D artwork. So I'm interested in making tools and resources, but I'm also interested in actually just making artwork as it is. One thing I noted in one of these previous hunting for inspiration videos is that when you have access to a camera in a game, like all games do, that's good practice for 3D composition. So if you're a 3D artist, you can move around the scene and try and get the best angles to take pictures of things and conceptualize how the line of a scene draws a focus down to specific points. You can consider things like the rule of thirds. If I kind of draw lines like this, are you trying to focus the point on anything in the scene? Not so much here. I mean, maybe. But having access to cameras like this gives you a sandbox environment to do that in. We can also analyze the distribution of detail. So we've got pretty clear areas of detail here. And then we notice details of various sizes, so more large, smaller, medium-sized details to add a visual interest to the scene. It shows how you can add a lot without actually overcrowding a space by having areas of visual rest, such as this. So I'll just highlight more areas of rest there for you so you can kind of get, an example of what that looks like. So when doing videos like this and looking back for the references, I kind of want to hear from you as well. What would you find useful? Because I'm going to extract things that I'm going to use, but doing breakdowns and analyses like this, you might also find useful. Maybe we can do all of these. Actually, let's do that for an example. I'm going to do a few checkboxes here. So C for Curtis, B for breakdown, and I'll just tick these off as I do them. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to look at this and think material-wise. We got some really nice wood samples. These are white, so maybe they're painted. Also reminds me of birch trees while I'm thinking about that. Vegetation packs. Over here, I'm noticing grunge. Reminds me of my ambient grunge pack, which is something I need to work on. It also reminds me there's not much normal bump detail here, which is similar with my pack. I wanted to add a physicality update, which I had been working on with geometry nodes, but it didn't really go anywhere. Here I see rivets. This reminds me of a structural pack I wanted to make, which started off as like container elements. So I was doing modular container pieces, and I remember there were connecting joints I made that looked like that. This is an interesting example of how they could be applied in different types of artistic scenes. Also wood for structural pieces, because structural pieces don't just have to be metallic. I was thinking about doing just metallic ones for that kind of pack, but maybe when looking at a scene like this, it reminds me that I should explore different types of materials. Piping alongside things like container elements might also be extremely complementary. They're also very easy to modularize because they're made of, predictable structural pieces, so we can split things off like corners as well as the straight poles. Also, ceiling supports, something I've experimented with in artwork in the past, but it's a bit of a hard thing to know how to do correctly. When I look at an object like this, I see, okay, kind of decorative. For my afterglow lighting work, I I have very plain and studio-like scenes, but I may also want to do decorative, emissive, and diegetic elements as well. And here, like the previous reference, we have a window looking to the exterior, which reminds me that if I had a window object, maybe there's some kind of light-based tool or object that I can place kind of behind the window to simulate exterior lighting, which again contributes to the lighting product. I'm just stuck here so far in this part of the image, but you can see what I'm doing is I'm just taking bits of it and it's reminding me about ideas that I had and feeding in inspiration to my subconscious. Now I can do that for the rest of the image, in which case I might want to pay attention to some of these artifact elements and the textures on them, and a reminder about me wanting to sample surfaces from my own objects that I've got in real life. How would I do that? Would I separate them down into different elements, like we've got repeating patterns and more generic or ambiguous noise-like surfaces? If making assets like this, should they be designed in a way where they're just floating in midair, or should they have a ground point already built into the object, in the case of here, having the band already laying on the surface? These are things to keep in mind. If I was then to swap to doing a breakdown, I would instead focus less on taking ideas like this, which are much more specific, and think in more general terms. Okay, so we've got like a high density area for details, another high density one. Notice that there's more darkness here, and a bit more darkness here as well with the harsh shadows. Areas of light, so we are breaking these off with contrast. We have areas of rest with light grunge details in between, and areas of higher density details, but again, notice how the light is not trying to light absolutely everything. In this regard, this is brilliant balance-wise because we can still focus on specific elements of focus without making the scene too busy by lighting absolutely everything because there are so many details in here. Notice as well how we have some texture surface property variety, so we have very bland and high roughness materials like this, whereas we have lower roughness materials which help to accentuate the light. Elements like this also help to draw the eye, so we can visualize a path where the viewer eye may move between elements such as this. Again, following the line, and wherever we have specific points of interest like this, we can imagine that these may be areas to add some storytelling. Now, this may already be happening, such as with this gramophone type thing and the artworks here. Now, the artworks don't necessarily tell much of a new story. In the context of this Indiana Jones game, we already know that he's interested in artifacts and archaeology, of course. But having visual points of interest doesn't automatically correlate to storytelling. So if you are making a piece of artwork and you're quite happy with the structure of it, you can then try to identify these points where the eye may be immediately drawn to and say, hey, I'm going to adjust these in a way that kind of contributes to the lore and understanding of the universe I'm making inside of a piece of artwork. So then how do we turn this into something useful? Well, after doing an analysis of a reference like this, we should then try to consolidate things. So if I take all the notes for ideas I've had relating to my work, I will then try and pass those into like my Notion database where I keep different ideas and track tasks and stuff. And I also have this thing where wherever I make notes, I draw a circle. My mind has now been attuned to whenever it sees a circle, it needs to be crossed off. I have a tick put for it. So if I keep coming back to this file, I'll see this circle here, which reminds me that I need to consolidate all these ideas that I just came up with. Similarly, if you're an artist and you've prepared your analysis of a reference like this, you can look at it and say, okay, I'm going to now try and make a scene of this for myself. So maybe you're using Blender or something else. For your learning or making something for your portfolio, I'm going to put a circle here. So now I know that I also need to come back and maybe draft up a scene that has elements like this compositionally that we've noticed. Maybe I'll focus on doing an open space with sides full of many details. And maybe working on this will also give me new ideas for things to work on, like new asset packs or material packs and stuff like that. Now, this also brings me on to a question I've had in the past from different people, which is, how do you come up with so many ideas for things? And I've got that at different points in time for different things, more so when working on just random tools for Blender. When you look at something like this, we've spent a relatively short amount of time just analyzing one single frame from a video game, of which I now have hundreds split across different reference boards. One single image already gives me a lot of work to do if I was to maximize the usefulness of it by following the threads of inspiration and seeing what I can come up with. So especially if you're like a Blender YouTuber that's thinking, oh, what should I make next for my video? Just go on Pinterest, play a video game, take some screenshots, have a think about it, and you're bound to come up with something. Rather than something, you're bound to come up with 100 things to do. And it's not all just necessarily a derivative thing, because then we can kind of explore the idea of variations. So let's speak about variations. Well, this may be more the case of something like stealing like an artist. If something like this gives you an idea for a scene where you've got high levels of detail on shelves, and then you've got some area of open space, and then you've got some strong light coming in, ask yourself a question, which is, what if the camera was put in a different place? What if I put the camera over here looking in, and I'd end up with the detail laid out in a different order? border maybe, with like some open space in between? The perspective on this isn't particularly accurate. What if the light instead came from above? And what if I kind of restructured the top of it as well? So you would end up with a kind of different lighting profile, and say like I put a statue in here, we'd get a bit of shadowing coming off and projecting from the statue there. The point is that if you're stuck for ideas for things, they are absolutely everywhere. When looking at references, I think part of the important thing about them is you don't need to take them literally and you don't need to copy them for what they are. Use them as inspiration, as a starting point, as a launch pad to then take you onto new ideas, and then combine them as well. So let's say that I take these 3 ideas as a learning exercise and then I carry them forward. So let's go to this one here with a different type of architecture. I could say to myself, okay, what if I took this idea of this angle, but then I tried to incorporate this type of archway? So that might mean something like, instead of having this type of ceiling, we had a rounded archway above instead, and try to incorporate this type of material to make it a bit more medieval in that respect. What if I then took the exterior from something like this and then brought this to the scene so it's more of a night scene instead? So we're now combining different ideas that we have. Now this is a very speculative video because clearly, as you can see, I haven't actually touched most of the references, and this recording is already getting on a bit now. But hopefully this is just giving you a little idea and kind of showing you how powerful even a single reference can be. It's not just the case that, just taking a random screenshot from a game is just a fun novelty. It's something that can be extremely useful to your learning and your future work. So I'm curious in hearing from you, what would you find most useful if I was to sit down and then do breakdowns of all these references I've been acquiring? Would you like a combination of things like the ideas that I would take for it? Would you like visual breakdowns of detail, lighting, composition, the direction of eye lining? Would you like ideas for how to combine them? What do you find useful? Because there's a virtually infinite variety of things that I could speak about when looking back through the references we've taken. I could do this for hours, for days, weeks, for years. If anyone would actually watch it, let me know. And like I've said before, these PureRef files with the screenshots are available for my patrons. So that's patreon.com/CurtisHolt. And to get to them, you can go to, actually, I'll show you. If you go to my website, there's a members page. Now you can sign up as a YouTube member or a patron. They both get slightly different things because YouTube members get extra features here on YouTube, like a little icon by your name. But if you're signed in as a patron, you can go into something like the Hunting for Inspiration page. And here, there are links that take you to posts that require you to be signed in as a patron. So if I click on this post here, it will take me to the parent page for this Indiana Jones series, and here we'll find the attachments, which I will keep adding as the episodes go on. So yeah, let me know, and if you made it this far through the video, put a pen or a pencil emoji since we've been doing a lot of annotating. Have a great day, everyone, and I will see you next time.